Big Ron Shaw here, the Earl of Upsets, telling you to watch my friends, Monte and the Pharaoh, on Long Island's #1 wrestling podcast show, and soon to be the world's #1 wrestling podcast show. That is going to be a big upset.
The Monte and the Pharaoh show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
The NWA heavyweight champion, and at the time you had to be able to go 60 as a babyface or a heel as a champion. And this guy had been around, and he was polite with everybody, but I wasn't intimidated. I didn't think I was good enough to even talk to him. But when that'd be like you're breaking in baseball and you're playing baseball with Babe Ruth, and you don't want to talk to Babe Ruth because you don't feel you're worthy of him. And that's the way I felt, was because I knew I was the shits, and I never thought I would stay in the business as long as I did here, of just talking shit and doing whatever.
Drew Wilson knows how to keep us on live here. Hey, Rip, how you liking this 80-degree weather? It's $10 super chat. This is the greatest weather we've had here today. Opinions on Monte and the Pharaoh.
Oh yeah, I watch them on the internet a lot of times. They're really good. I like them. They have some great guests on there. I like their opinions. As a matter of fact, they're over with me. I watch them as much as I can, just as much as I watch Jimmy Cornette stuff, and that's probably the main two that I like. But then again, I like James. I like to watch James's stuff, and then God, I see the guy. I've been on his show, but I can't. The dark-haired guy, this and that. But anyway,
I've never heard of Monte and the Pharaoh.
Yeah, they're good. You can Google.
They wrestling?
Yeah, it's all about wrestling stuff.
Oh.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte and the Pharaoh, only seen here out of my man cave and Wahoo Saloon. Jimmy, how are you, buddy?
Good. Back in Florida. Here I am.
Yeah, you were in New York. I didn't get to see you, and there you go. That's how simple that was, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I haven't said this in a long time. That theme song for Monte the Pharaoh is the great Wisteria Hall, my partner, Jimmy Pharaoh, along with his partner, Bart Kriggs, make up. That's a real theme song, bro. That's
Thank
real.
you. Yeah, it is real. And I spent 3 days being real in the studio with Bart till like 3 a.m.
I can't wait for album number 3, dude. I am on pins and needles.
Nice.
Do you believe that I'm on pins and needles?
Well, physically no, but emotionally you could be.
I could be.
You could be.
And that guy on the Rip Rogers thing, full shit, you don't know who we are. Anyway, very excited to have the return of the great Val Venis. We're going to bring him in. Are you ready, Jimmy?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a drum roll for him? No drum roll. Let's not be lame.
Drum roll.
Whatever. There he is. Val Venis, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you for joining us, Val. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you doing?
Great to see you. You look great, man. How old are you now, man?
I am 54 years old.
Damn.
54.
They're all getting to be younger than us, Mike.
Freaking 4.
Yeah.
Do you hear me? 54 years old and looking fine.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna put both of you on the spot now, right?
What?
So, look, at some points in life, right? We're young, we feel good, we think we still have it, and in your mind, you're still 19, right, or 20, or even 30, right? But now you're out there once in a while. Now you're at the bar, checking out a chick. You think you got it, and they want literally nothing to do with you. I mean, look, I'm just sharing my life. How is it for you two guys? I mean, Val, you were getting laid left and right. It's like, how is it still at 54? Are you in the Monte boat?
Not at all.
Yeah,
I don't even go to bars. What are you doing going to bars still?
I'm not
Bars
going
are like,
no, you listen, dude. You go out, right, and you like checking out a chick, right? You know, the chick, but 30 something, 40 something, maybe 50. You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, I got a shot with this. Let me, give my rap, right? And they're just like, they just want nothing to do with your old ass. You know what I'm saying?
I never had that problem. I don't know what you're talking about. I have absolutely zero clue what you're talking about.
What's he talking about? Yeah, I don't have a clue either there.
Fuck you both. Then my life sucks. Go ahead, man. What?
You just gotta walk into the bar and the first thing you say, "Hello, biological ladies."
Oh, there you go.
Wow. That's what
Case
I'm talking
closed.
all right. You know what, man? I feel like shit right now. I got to tell you. I expected one of you guys to go along with me on this one because.
Well, I find it amazing that it might be different for Val and myself. Look, when it came to bars, for me as a musician, it was a place of employment. It's where I played. I never ever looked at it like I'm going to pick up a chick tonight. I went and did my show, and if somebody organically talked to me, "Hello, ladies," as Val would say,
dude, I'm not. You know what? But I'm not saying bar, church.
What are you at church?
Car wash, whatever.
At
supermarket.
At church. Hello, Old Testament. I mean, what are you doing? What?
Now we got to ask the question: what type of woman are you looking for?
Oh,
you got to be able to answer that question, because if you're just going out there with a blank canvas and you have no idea what you want, I mean, you're really going to waste the time that you spend out there looking. However, if you prep before you go out, in other words, sit down and have a serious conversation with yourself. Ask yourself the important questions. What am I looking for? What type of woman am I looking for?
You know what?
Create a vision for yourself of what your ideal woman is before you go out and look and just walk into a bar and then start going, which one wants this?
All right. So I'm Spanish.
I'm gonna make myself a little bit clearer, right? So throughout my life, I have gained this thought process where nothing really floats my boat too often, right? Nothing, literally, right? And if they're over 50, forget about it. It's not even in the wheelhouse. It's like, move on, right? And but the point is this: once in a while, something will float your boat, and you think you still got it, and you lay it down, and it's like, get the fuck away from me, you freak, right? And you're just like, woof, That's all I'm saying. It's like you got to realize, like, you know how I just said I'm not attracted to them. They're certainly not attracted to me. So I guess it's just a wash. I don't know what to say. Listen, man. All I know is this: my life sucks, and you guys are okay, and that's all I gotta say, right? So,
wow.
Yeah, wow. You're right.
What
I'll just shoot myself now.
Oh God!
Listen, if anyone's looking for a lot of wrestling talk tonight, it's not going to happen. There is a few things we're covering, but it really has to do with situational things. So. Last week, Jimmy was in New York, and I had the honor, I guess, of interviewing Rachel Ellering. So I asked her the question about the PC environment in pro wrestling against Hulk Hogan, Tessa Blanchard, and we'll talk about Vinnie Mac later. But she felt that she had no comment for Tessa Blanchard, right? No comment. And that she felt Hulk and Vince have no room in wrestling and they should just disappear, just to paraphrase. Thoughts on today's PC environment with the young, well, forget about just wrestling, just in general, this young youth. Go ahead, Val. You and Jimmy weigh in.
Well, I can tell you that I think a lot of the young people are incredibly misled these days. When it comes to taking a look at our industry, who blazed the path for the new generation to continue on that path, building the industry of pro wrestling. You got to be able to show respect, yet still be able to disagree on politics and situations within society, right? To take a situation that one may disagree or have an issue with someone else on a political position that just so happens to have blazed a path in the wrestling industry and hate that person because they have a different political position than the younger generation does. I mean, to me, that is childish. You should absolutely be able to disagree with your friends and your colleagues and your family members on political issues, yet still love and respect those people. There's a lot more to people than just, political positions that they believe. I believe political positions are important to talk about, but I don't think differences in political positions are a reason to hate another person.
We live in the day and age of the participation trophy. It is a day and age where apologists are only so sorry unless you exist in their own window. People are feel a very full sense of power and use the internet to their ideologies the best they can, and you see it all the time. Hogan and McMahon are just examples of what we see when it comes to the narrative of what I call the perfect parade, which is a point of view that recently has taken a loss politically. If I may dance in the shadows because that's where they exist, I might as well speak in their language. Basically, it's cowardly and it's hypocritical to think that nobody's ever had a racial thought in their head. You're all full of shit. Everybody has a racial thought in their head at some point in their life, and you're all full of shit. Okay? To decide that that's enough to take apart Hulk Hogan, and of course, because he certainly leans a certain political way, it's the party. Here comes the party. Here it comes. He's open season, like a Vince McMahon is open season, like a President Trump is open season. He's one of them.
Well, let me ask you this, Val. So you talked about the political end. How about the racial end of a Tessa Blanchard she's been accused of, or Hulk Hogan, who was caught on video using racial slurs. Do you think that's something that someone should be crucified for the rest of their life?
No, I mean, obviously I think we all can agree that racism is, number one, it's a distraction. And number two, it's just an emotional connection to something that's completely irrelevant in human life. It doesn't matter what one's skin color is when you look at the basic root facts of the foundation of the issue. Skin color does not matter. We're all human beings. No matter what your skin color is, you have a right to life, liberty, and property. And we need to respect those three: life, liberty, and property. We need to respect other people's rights to life, liberty, and property. When it comes to discussing skin color, I mean, it's superficial. It's a distraction. It's almost like there's an entity out there that continues to push the racial narrative into non-critical thinking people's minds. And when you send that message into non-critical thinking positions' minds, that what the propagandists attempt to do is use an emotional connection to drag those people into a fit of anger and hatred. And that's what we see. The left is so easy for the media to drag the leftist mindset into a pot of anger and hatred. Like a lot of people, when this whole thing went down with Nyla Rose, for example, I state the fact, Nyla Rose is a man. That shouldn't be a controversial thing to say. But there's an emotional connection that's been propagandized into leftist minds that if they hear me say Nyla Rose is a man, that should trigger them to hate my guts. I'm stating a fact. I'm not stating it out of hatred. I'm not stating it because I despise Nyla Rose. I don't know Nyla Rose. Nyla Rose may be a fantastic person. I'm just simply stating a fact that Nyla Rose is a man. And there's some political issues that I think adults need to discuss, because right now in society, we're using a very powerful form of propaganda, media. AEW has an incredibly powerful platform. They can call themselves entertainment, and they are. But you need to use, when you have the power of entertainment that AEW has, you have the power to very subtly put messages into people's minds and lead them down to normalizing something that should never be normalized. What Nyla Rose suffers from is a very real issue. It's called gender dysphoria. That's a very real issue. I'm not hating on Nyla Rose by stating that Nyla Rose suffers from gender dysphoria. To feed into gender dysphoria, to me, is evil. You don't feed into cancer. You don't feed into schizophrenia. Why do we now feed into gender dysphoria? Because it's been propagandized into leftist minds. They're programmed that when somebody calls a man that suffers from gender dysphoria and thinks they are a woman, calls them a man, that you are to hate that person, ban that person, slander that person. And they're literally programmed to immediately knee-jerk into hatred, disgust, and slander. They will slander your name, and you're just stating facts. A lot of people will say, I just had this discussion with my agent, Eric Sims, here earlier today. We had this discussion where, well,
1 second, Val. Doesn't Eric suffer from gender dysphoria?
Wow, that's hey,
No, it's too early, Eric. No. Here we go.
Well, all down here. Hey. I know who and what I am. That's
all right. There you go.
It looks
go ahead.
dysfunctional.
Val, I didn't. All right. Anyway, go into your conversation with Eric. I'm sorry I even tried to make a joke. This is a good conversation. Go ahead.
So, like Eric and I had this conversation earlier where he says that, hey, if a man wants to be called a woman because they feel like a woman, I'm going to be respectful and go along with it and call them a woman or a she or whatever. And to me, while that may seem like an emotionally sound thing to do, if you only look at it you look at it on the surface and you don't drill into the facts. The facts are that human being suffering from a very real mental disorder called gender dysphoria. For that person to request that I refer to him as her, my view is I would be feeding into that gender dysphoria. I would be affirming that gender dysphoria. And to me, that's evil. I'm not going to affirm someone else's mental illness. I'll be polite. I'll be kind. I'll be compassionate. Hey, sorry. I understand this is the way that this is what's happening. I hope you realize that I recognize gender dysphoria when I see it. And, with all due respect, I'm not going to feed into that. But, hey, we can go outside and smoke a joint and talk about the football game if you like. To me, that's rational. I don't hate the person. But I'm not going to play along and support other human beings suffering from gender dysphoria, because they are suffering from gender dysphoria. That's a fact that no one can deny. And anyone that does deny that those people are suffering from the mental disorder called gender dysphoria, they're disingenuous and they're doing no help to the person suffering from gender dysphoria.
So what you're saying then is someone like a billionaire like Tony Khan, or maybe any other agent that owns a wrestling, we'll just use wrestling because you're a wrestler as an example, they're actually being enablers and supporting this. And in some lack of a better word, they're almost using Satan's work, in your opinion, right?
I mean, entertainment has always been a tool to be able to sway culture. Where does pop culture come from? It comes from the entertainment industry. And we see a lot of that. Clothing brands, the way we speak, things we say catch on in culture, and it just becomes part of culture. When you use that entertainment for good, portraying good guys and bad guys in what we would call realistic roles. Okay. You can promote a solid foundation for culture to continue growing on. But when you start to normalize something that is a very real mental disorder, gender dysphoria, and you start putting a man with a woman's title on there, not making comedy like Santino or anything like that, but having a man wrestle women as a woman normalizes in the minds of the people transgenderism, which is normalizing gender dysphoria, a mental disorder. You might as well be normalizing cancer and feeding cancer whatever it needs to continue to grow. Or when people suffer from schizophrenia, egg that on. Make them more schizophrenic. Make them more schizophrenic. It doesn't make any sense. And so this idea that we can use the entertainment industry irresponsibly. I mean, we got teenagers watching the show, and it's fine to portray certain storylines certain ways. There's ways you can use transgenders, but they should be used in ways that's realistic. They suffer from a gender dysphoria. Tie that into a storyline. Make it realistic. And, when we're using entertainment to promote evil like this, I mean, it is evil to reinforce another human being's mental disorder called gender dysphoria is just evil to me. We should be showing compassion and maybe trying to help those people get back on the right path, but it's gender dysphoria. It's a mental disorder, and people don't want to talk about that. They'd rather feed into their emotional connection to the issue rather than what reality is. That human being is suffering from a mental disorder. In a lot of cases, we're seeing a lot of destruction in society. We're seeing teenagers chop their breasts off, remove their sex organs, females taking loads of male hormones. And they're not competing in bodybuilding. They're trying to become something they will never become. And that's an illness that harms a lot of people in the long run. And we see that with people that regret transitioning as they get older. And, those people tend to get shunned by the transgender community that once embraced them. And so, yeah, I think entertainment is being used very irresponsibly now. And I think that needs to change. And I'll never change my mind on that unless somebody can show me facts with logic based in reason as to why I should, and it makes sense. Then, of course, I would change my mind. But I don't ever see that happening. No one can come up with, real, reasonable, logical, rational reasons as to why I'm wrong. It's all based on feelings and emotion. And you can't discuss anything with these people because they literally hate you from the get-go.
So, Val, what's your thoughts on the genetic narrative that I've heard attached to this dysphoria that you speak of? What is your thoughts on that theory, that it's genetic, that you're born with it, it's not a choice and you're born with it? Now, it may not be a choice, obviously, if it's dysphoria. If it's what you're describing, then there is no choice in that either, I would think, because you've developed some sort of disease that nobody's paying attention to, correct?
So I would disagree. I don't believe it's a genetic thing at all. I mean, the mind is incredibly malleable. I mean, propaganda, especially when the population does not think critically anymore. And I've got lots of evidence as to we can show why the population does not think critically in general. I'm not talking about any one person or that, but in general, we have a population that fails to think about issues critically, disconnecting themselves from any emotional attachment to the issue that they want to scrutinize. That doesn't happen very often anymore. And I think when you have a population that fails to think critically and scrutinize issues from a foundational first principles position, then you come out, it's easy to manipulate people through propaganda. So when people say it's genetic, I say BS. There's no evidence of that. It's just people saying it's genetic. But what is true is gender dysphoria is a programmed mental disorder. It's may be caused from a combination of trauma and programming from, the entertainment or mainstream media or the education system, especially these teachers having these kids read these hyper-sexualized books. And I mean, we should be teaching these kids not only to read good material, but how to comprehend what they read and think critically about what they read. They don't teach that in school today.
So let me ask you something, not to cut you off here. So I totally understand where you're coming from. So we're talking, this is a learned behavior in a lot of situations. Why do you think this country, this particular country, and many other countries want to go this way then? Why are they doing this? Is this brainwashing in order for government control? Like, give me the reason that you would train or try to brainwash someone to think that if they're a male, they want to be a female, or a female wants to be a male. Why would they do this? What's the reasoning behind it?
Very simple. From coin clippers to counterfeiters, they control the world. That's a fact. And they look at us as their slaves. They enslave us through their taxation because they control all the governments. They control us through their counterfeiting racket that they've brainwashed us into believing is inflation, when they counterfeit their own currency that we literally tokenize the value of our work, labor, skills, talents, resources, time, effort into their product called the Federal Reserve note in America. And they counterfeit that money, which they do regularly. They're literally stealing our value that we created working out of the dollars we already worked for. And you don't even recognize it because you still have that $20 bill in your hand. It just doesn't have the same value that you had when you first got paid in that $20 bill, because they literally counterfeited the currency and stole the value out of that $20 bill. So you have inflation via counterfeiting. That's a crime against humanity. Then on top of that, you have their taxation, which is another crime against humanity. It's extortion, state-sanctioned extortion racket. So what do you have when you can take value created by the private sector and extract it through inflation or counterfeiting and through taxation or extortion and theft? What do you need to do when you have a population of human beings that you can extract value from that way? You need to be able to control those people. You need to dumb them down so they never catch on to what you're doing. You do that through entertainment. You do that through mainstream media. You do that through capturing the educational system. The Federal Reserve was always said that if you allow the central bank to set roots in America, the corporations that will grow up around that Federal Reserve will deprive Americans until they are completely homeless and they're in the streets. And that is so true. We see that happening today. You have the Federal Reserve, and then around the Federal Reserve, you have BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. And then what do BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard own? Everything, all mainstream media, all of Hollywood. So if they own all of the propaganda machines that they feed constantly, even through the live streaming, YouTube, the movie theaters, the mainstream media that you watch on TV shows, they own it all. And if they decide at the very top that they're going to push a transgender movement, which they did when they brought Obama. They installed Obama into power, which they made that shift. And if you remember, Obama turned the entire White House rainbows color. If you remember that phase when he first got into office, put a whole rainbow light system over top of or shining on the White House. That was the beginning of the shift. And by 2020, when Biden was installed, what did we have? We had transgenderism getting shoved down the children's throats in schools. Why do they do this? To divide the family. If you can divide the family, you break apart the nuclear family. If you break apart the nuclear family, you break down the very foundation that built America from the ground up. If you break down that very foundation that America was built upon, you can reorder America into your own communist construct. And that's what the central bankers, the people that counterfeit currency, are doing right now. And, right now we take a look at what's going on in Iran and Israel, and you're looking over the Ukraine and Russia. I mean, these are just match flicks into what could be coming a nuclear war. They will literally enslave us to a full 15-minute city district, if it's the last thing they have to do with a nuclear war, if they have to do it, they'll pull that trigger. So that's basically what it's all about, breaking down the nuclear family. And one way to do it is to put transgenderism into the minds of the young people. So they go home to their parents and they say, hey, Dad, I think I'm a girl today. And what's that do to a dad? Breaks his heart. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. It starts to cause division in the family. Or you will have parents that are already indoctrinated and they'll immediately do as they're programmed. Oh, okay, I'll start calling you she. I support you. And let's go to pride parades and make you part of the community. Either way, they are breaking down the very fabric that America was built upon. And that's it. I mean, and that's it. It literally starts from the central bankers and through their tentacles of corporations like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. They literally own everything and they control and brainwash everything.
Where does this leave the core of this country if we are heading into World War III? Because if this country is that divided right now, and you're looking at a potential World War III, a guy like Nostradamus can't be far off with his 27 years of the Third Great War prediction, because we are a mess. Where does this leave us if we're looking at World War III?
That's a good question. I have no answers for that. I don't.
At the end of the day that the core value that certain people do have in this country will be the ones that will have to protect this and save this.
Oh yeah. At some point, it's either, rational, moral, ethical human beings are going to have to rise up and literally, take back over control of and reinstall some form of normalcy.
Right.
Because what we have now is insane. It's absolutely insane.
The end of the participation trophies and the individualism, and a little bit more about the collective, for God's sakes. One nation.
Well, I think the collective, you can't ignore the individual. You got to respect the individual's rights, because if you have a collective where all the individual's rights are violated, then you have a corrupted collective. You have to respect the very foundation of individuals' rights.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you're parachuting down into a very hostile country, you don't have time for, well, I'm this or I'm that or I believe that. We don't have time for that. There's no time for that. That's what I meant by one. Granted,
yes. Granted, I don't think there's anything we can do at this point to stop them from pulling the trigger if they so choose. If they feel there's a need to pull the trigger, I don't think there's anything we can do to stop it. Why? Because we've allowed them since 1913 to inflate away or counterfeit away our value that we create getting up and going to work every single day. Then they take away even more of our value through extortion and theft that they brainwash us into believing was taxation. So they've taken so much of our value and built up such extreme mechanisms of destruction. The military-industrial complex, we can't beat them. Come on, let's be realistic. And that's all funded by us. We are literally paying for the construction of a structure, a military structure that could, if the trigger was ever pulled by the most devious person in the world, could be used to absolutely kill us and enslave us. And the question we have to ask is, what is the common denominator in every single war, pretty much, that's ever existed? Taxation and central bankers counterfeiting or coin clipping. Every single war has been funded through taxation or coin clipping or counterfeiting. And so maybe we should take a look at maybe getting rid of taxation and maybe hard cap the money supply so no one can counterfeit it anymore. I mean, you would see prices go down while wages go up until you have a balance.
When you're saying hard capping, are you talking about demonetizing the dollar, meaning that we're working off of like without lack of a better term, non-structural money, a handling of money? It's basically almost like a new world order type of chip.
No, not at all. What I'm saying is whatever we use as a tool to trade value. You got to remember, the fiat currency is just the banker's tool that we've been forced to use to tokenize our value from our work, our labor, our skills, our talents into. We do that when we get paid. When your boss pays you money or your customer pays you money, you're literally taking the value that you created working and tokenizing it into that money. Now you can trade that money, right? You can trade it for another piece of value, like loaf of bread, for example. That's valuable. It's value for value. It just makes trading your value easy. But you don't have to use the banker's product anymore, like dollars. You can use Bitcoin, you can use Monero, you can use Xano, you can use gold, you can use silver.
I understand where you're going from there, but basically, to me, Bitcoin is our step forward to what we call the New World Order, where eventually we'll have one chip currency that every country uses, and eventually there is no currency. It's basically you have a computer chip in your wrist, and you get whatever value is on that chip, and you go and you exchange money that way. That's what I'm asking you. Are you? So you see value in a New World Order type of structure?
Yes and no, not in a centralized manner. Centralization clearly doesn't work. It corrupts power. I mean, look, every nation right now has a centralized government. And what do? They all go to war and kill each other. And they drag us all into it, with patriotism and all the other type of propaganda. That's all funded through taxes and inflation, right? So you have Bitcoin, for example. Now, Bitcoin is not a great example. I've always been a fan of Bitcoin because of the technology, but it's been hijacked.
It's been manipulated. It's been manipulated.
It's decentralized, right? And so there's only 21 million coins in circulation. So you know that nobody can just go and create more Bitcoin. So when you store your value into Bitcoin, you know that there's no banker that can go and counterfeit the Bitcoin and steal your value. Now, your value might go up and down with the market, but you're not going to have a banker permanently inflating it away by counterfeiting. You know what I mean? Whereas if you take your value out of Bitcoin and you put it into US dollars, that central bank at the Federal Reserve is having currency printed constantly. So your value that you tokenize into the US dollars just gets leaked out like a ghost, just leaks out of your dollars, right? So what I see as a far better system would be a system of, number one, free market competing currencies that people can choose to decide, hey, which tool would best protect the value I create working 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week? Is it the US dollar? I don't want to put my value in that because they just counterfeit that and call it inflation. Should I put it in Bitcoin? Well, that would be good. No one can inflate my value away, but there is volatility. So I might have times where I have to wait for it to come back up or whatever. And the big issue with Bitcoin is it's completely transparent. So if I buy a cookie 10 years ago with Bitcoin, you will know the date, time that I bought that cookie and exactly how much I spent by just putting that transaction right into the Bitcoin blockchain explorer. Your entire financial life is open to the world's scrutiny. And so there's no privacy in Bitcoin. And that's a big issue because you can't have freedom and liberty without individual privacy. So there are other products out there like Xano or Monero that provide incredible privacy on decentralized blockchains. So it records a transaction, but the only two people that can see the transaction are the sender and the receiver. Government can't see the transactions. Let's say I buy your t-shirt and I buy it for $10 worth of Monero. Well, you now have my address because I send you my address, right? Or I send you $10 to your address. If you put that text into the Monero blockchain, you won't be able to see how much I have in my wallet. My wallet will be blacked out to you. If you were to do that with Bitcoin, you would be able to put my address into the Bitcoin blockchain explorer and be able to see exactly how much I'm worth. Right. And that could make me a target. Somebody, make street gangs a target, they'll come target you. So, privacy is incredibly important for freedom and liberty, and Monero and Xano are two of the leading products. So I see a system where we have private, decentralized, competing cryptocurrencies, and this is just one tool that you could use. but competing cryptocurrencies that the individual themselves can investigate and decide for themselves, hey, which tool is best to secure my value in and to spend my value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. Let me veer right a little bit. You're still a Canadian citizen?
Yes, still a Canadian citizen, correct.
So what if the U.S. citizen and the Patriots, like, why is this fucking Canadian guy talking about U.S. and not talking about his own country? I know, I'm sure you have U.S. citizenship also, but how do you answer that question?
Well, I love Canada. Canada is a beautiful country, but let's face it, Canada is I'd left in 2003 because I saw the socialism just creeping up on our lives. I saw the taxes constantly going higher. I saw money being wasted. I saw the states, at the time kind of leaning in that direction, but not the amount that Canada was. And I love the state of Arizona. I said, screw it. I'm gonna go down and live in Arizona. And so I moved down to Arizona and in 2003, and Canada just got drastically even more socialist since then. I mean, to even fathom the idea that they would even consider freezing peaceful truckers' bank accounts, and to have it so normalized that no one went to jail for doing it. The politicians are still out there free, like nothing happened. I mean, that's literally a crime against humanity. Government has no right to freeze people's value that they created with their own two hands working in the private sector. Yet the government did it and they got away with it. And to me, I saw that happen. And I was so glad I was out of Canada. And it's sad because I love Canada. And I see the states, especially when Biden got elected in. Well, it started really when Clinton was in, when I started to really notice a little bit of that direction towards socialism in the states. But then Obama got in and you started to see him laying the groundwork for an eventual grand shift, which happened when Biden was finally installed.
Well, I think it was a grand plan, right? And that's why Donald Trump, or President Trump, is, many people dislike him because he was the great disruptor of this. He was the force that interrupted this whole plan and put them behind on the plan. Your thoughts?
I agree with you 110%. Now, I'm cautious with Trump. Trump says a lot of the right things, but if he really truly cared about America, he's not a dumb man. He's got to understand. He has to understand this, that the game changer he could do for America is rip the IRS out by its roots so it'll never grow back in America again, make taxation illegal, statutorily illegal in America, ban the central bank and allow competing decentralized currencies to be offered to the people so the people can decide for themselves what tool is best for them to protect the values they create out in the workforce, out in the economy, the American economy, the most powerful economic economy in the world.
What do you see him doing so far?
Well, I mean, he fiddles around with the tax code. He came out and he said no taxes on tips. Hey, great. But should we be grateful? No, I don't think so. We should be grateful when Trump decides to rip the IRS out, right out of the ground by its roots and all, and then poison that ground with Monsanto Roundup if he wants to, so it never grows back ever again.
Wow. Monsanto, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
Val, do you think Canada should become part of the United States at this point?
51, baby.
I mean, I'm not against it. Really, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe we should have a state. And, but I got to be realistic. We have a state, and I probably won't see a stateless society in my lifetime. So to answer your question, I would love to see Canada become the 51st state, just because I can watch all the people that are addicted to socialized medicine up there just flip out that they've got to spend a little bit of their own paycheck to buy their own healthcare insurance. That would be fantastic.
But there is some value to that for people that don't understand in the audience. If they were to become a state, then tariffs are no longer part of the business. Now you have free exchange of, whether it be food or metals and materials, right? There's no tariffs behind there. So that eliminates that type of cost, which, again, I'm no expert on what Canada makes against China. But for example, if Canada was to duplicate some of the stuff China's doing, you can now start building the economy within the United States. So I'm all for it, to be truthful.
Yeah, I'm all for. I would love to see that happen. I think that would be. I think that would be huge. From a statist perspective, from my anarchist perspective, the state still exists, and that's got to go. I do not agree with a state existing in the first place.
Val, how do you feel about the current U.S. immigration situation? Look, I'll throw my 2 cents in. If you jump my fence and you walk through my back door and you decide you're going to help yourself to my refrigerator, I do believe that there's a chest full of shotguns. So, what is your take on the current U.S. immigration situation?
Well, I think at first you might disagree with me, and then I think you'll finally agree with me. You want to hear it?
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, here we go. So I am a wide open borders guy. I believe in wide open borders. I believe, you maybe have some people down there checking ID, making sure they don't have a criminal record that's, like a dangerous person or something like that. I think those things are acceptable, but I'm a wide open borders guy. However, my dream of wide open borders cannot happen until you, number one, abolish taxation, and number two, abolish central banking and the fiat currency scam. Then you get rid of the mal prohibitum laws that restrict the Second Amendment of Americans. And then you also abolish all the social programs that government offers. So what this would do is, instead of America being a magnet for leeches around the world, the people that want a free ride, this is what we have today, where we work in America. The government takes our value through taxation and inflation. Then they have these programs to tell other people around the world, hey, come to America and we'll get you this much money per month, this much food stamps, this much in healthcare. It'll be great for you. What kind of people are going to take up that offer up? People that want a freeload. That's a fact. No one's going to deny that. That's a fact. When you're offering money that you stole from the people that created that value to offer it to people to come to your country, you're creating an incentive based on stolen loot. And who's attracted to that? Freeloaders. Now, if you get rid of taxation and you get rid of the central banking and counterfeiting racket, and you get rid of these mal prohibitum laws that restrict Americans' gun rights, and you allow them to arm themselves to as many teeth as they want. Hey, that's America, right? Now you have Americans that no longer have these government social programs. They don't have taxation. The Americans work and create value for themselves and their family and their communities.
Are there police?
Well, who looks at America now? Well, what type of people are attracted to America now? Who wants to come to America now? I'll tell you. The welder in Iran that is pissed off his government's taxing him for his hard work. He's going to come to America. Is having a skilled welder come to America adding to our economy? Hell yeah, it is. Come on in, motherfucker. Get to work. Look at the chef in China that works at one of the best restaurants ever. He's a phenomenal chef, and he's pissed off that China taxes the fuck out of him. Come to America and make cakes for us, motherfucker. And you'll get to keep every penny you earn. We'll attract grinders to America instead of freeloaders. And when you attract grinders, you don't need a border. Come on in.
Yeah, but so Val, that almost sound. It does make sense, but it almost sounds like Trump's plan of the golden ticket, right? If you pay to $500,000, you buy yourself immigration rights, and who's going to do that? The rich, the doctors in Iran, the rich. You're trying to bring the people that are going to go in, so you agree with Trump's plan of the golden ticket of immigration.
Because as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's basically saying if you can bring in $500,000 to invest, then you can become an American. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I don't think that's far enough. I think that's pulling at strings to make something sound. I mean, it sounds good on one. It's not enough. It's a little bit, but it's not enough. I say if the auto mechanic in Mexico who gets up and goes to work from early in the morning till late at night to raise his family, yet government taxes him away 50% of his value, and he's pissed off about that because he wants to work hard and keep the money that he wants, but he doesn't have $500,000. I still say that guy's an asset to America because there's a grinder. He's creating value. He's not freeloading. Bring him in. When you get grinders that create value Monday to Friday, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, you're adding to the economy. When you bring people in that collect food stamps and collect free hotel stays and free medical care, you create a drag on the economy. Our values being stolen to support those people. But if you allow the grinders to come in, everybody from your lowly street vendor that sells, street food but grinds, get him in here. He's going to make money, and if he's going to make money, he's going to spend that money creating a life for him and his family in America. In other words, he's an American who was born in the wrong country.
Val, in your vision that you're describing, because a lot of it sounds nice and premise, but the human race,
I agree.
I don't trust the human race. Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is that, do you think that, are you saying that people will police themselves in your vision? Because I was trying to ask you during when you were describing this, I'm like, okay, now if we've eliminated basically government power, financial power, and removed it from them, are there police in your vision of a world? I mean, do the people police themselves? It's impossible, bro.
Well, you would think that, right? However, I'm not against police. The only thing I'm against is funding police through taxation. I think communities should get together and find moral and ethical ways to fund the things they want, need, and desire. Everybody in communities wants some kind of security there. And if you remember, what did I say when I said that you can't allow open borders without getting rid of taxation, getting rid of banks, and getting rid of any rule that interferes with the Second Amendment of Americans. So what I'm against is a centralized force.
Hold on. I gotta ask you this then, Val. So you're saying let's get rid of taxation, but then in the end anyway, you're gonna have to pay for your security. So it's almost like the same thing. You pay taxes for your schools and your security and everything else. Right. Now you're eliminating, and now you're saying you're gonna use your funds anyway for this same premise, right?
Correct, but it's not the same thing. Completely different. Completely different.
Elaborate.
Well, let's say you want a chocolate bar, right? You want a chocolate bar, right? You put $5 down on the table. I snatch that $5 from you, and I go and get you a chocolate bar and bring it back and lay it down for you. You got what you wanted, but did I steal your $5?
Yeah.
I stole your $5, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. Whereas you could have taken your own $5 and gone to get any chocolate bar you want. You wouldn't have had to just taken the one that I chose for you. You could have gotten any one you want. And that's the difference. The difference isn't what we want, need, or desire. We all as a society want, need, or desire things. But we can't set up state-sanctioned extortion rackets to fund those things, because what doing so does, it takes some human beings in society and puts them above natural, common, universal laws against extortion, because that's factually what they're doing. They're now extorting people. You put them above, let's call it what it is, the law of the creator. You put them above the law of the creator, where they're no longer susceptible to extortion laws or theft laws, and they call it taxation. Yet the facts are they're doing the exact same thing that an extortionist and a thief would do.
But I understand that, but here's my point to this. So by giving your taxes, you're funding the state, who then supplies you with all this stuff. So where you're calling it extortion, I'm not disagreeing with you. But my point is, if you take away that taxation, then the state no longer has any power. There will be no state funding. So if you privately hire Pharaoh Security Agency to protect my land, and he fucks up, guess what? I have no leverage, right? He can't go to jail. I can't
Oh no, you're
sue
wrong.
him. Why is that?
You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Because that security force that you hired is a private security force. All the common laws apply to him. He can't violate other people's right to life, liberty, property.
But who's paying all these judicial systems? It's paid through taxes, right? The jails, everything.
It is.
It's all right.
It's all paid for taxes, and that should change. They should have different mechanisms of funding. And in today's world, there are millions of ways to raise money. It takes work, it takes effort, but it's that work and effort that brings communities together out of necessity. But when you set up a state-sanctioned extortion racket, well, guess what the community no longer needs to do? They no longer need to come together as one, so they just kind of stay separated and apart. They rely on the state, the centralized state, to provide their security. Well, now you're no longer in control of that security that secures you, because a centralized agency that you delegated power to is. It would be much better if you yourself would be in control of the security that you choose to hire. And if they fuck up, guess what? You're in control. You can fire them and hire someone else.
Again, I'm not trying to poke holes in things, but then you're talking about a mafia coming in and saying, hey, guess what? You may want to hire Pharaoh Security Agency, but I'm going to tell you what, you're hiring my agency. And if you don't hire my agency, we'll probably see you in a ditch somewhere, right?
What are you?
But what's that called? Here's the thing.
The Sopranos? What the?
Here's the thing. What's that called when they do that?
Extortion.
Would they do that knowing that Americans were armed from very young ages?
Interesting fact.
You see what I'm saying? The importance of the second. That's why I say Americans have to have their Second Amendment completely for them to exercise that right to bear arms to however many teeth they wish. You have to have humans empowered as individuals to secure their own security, because if you can't secure your own security, then it's clear you're not capable of delegating that security practice to someone else. You have to be able to secure your own home, your own land, before you can help the community secure the entire community.
And to defend your story, I will say it's not like the government's, we're defunding police at this point. Police are held at such a strenuous standard, they can't even really do their jobs anymore. So I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just trying to poke holes in some situations, but you've answered it well. For the wrestling fan out there, need to hear you. By the way, you should really run for politics. But anyway, I got to hear your viewpoint on, you've worked for Vincent Kennedy McMahon. I'm sure you've heard all the rumors, everything else. I want to hear your thoughts on what's going on with Vince and your honest feelings of the whole situation.
Well, I mean, Vince he was always good to me. I like Vince. Vince was always a good dude to me. I've heard the stories. I don't know what's true and what's not. Obviously, Vince has some, he's got his moral bar set pretty low when it comes to women, I think, and I'm just guessing. I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure
But you said moral bar, which I appreciate. There's a difference between moral bar and legal bar, but go ahead.
Correct. There absolutely is a stark difference. That's absolutely correct. He's definitely set his moral bar lower than what I would say should be acceptable. But is he a criminal? I don't believe that one bit. I don't believe he was involved in human trafficking. I don't believe any of that stuff. And, I'm not going to put 100% of that because I don't know. I didn't see what happened, in the office, behind the office walls. So I don't know for a fact, but I will say I don't see that. Was he an adulterer? Sure. That's a moral issue. That's something that he's got to have a sit down and have a discussion with Jesus Christ. But is he a criminal? No, not at all. I don't believe it. Not one bit.
I'm going to switch gears too, but it is wrestling related. Of all the characters you've played, and you've played quite a bunch actually, if people look at your resume, including in Mexico, where you were champion of Mexico. Geez, you were champion in Puerto Rico. Of all the different presentations you've given the fans over the years, how would you rank them? Like, what's your favorite? And to me, it'll always be Val in a towel. Not to sound like that didn't sound right, but that'll always be.
By the way, I don't even know where the fuck that wrestling question came from, Jimmy. You stuck that in on me, buddy. Good job.
Did I really? I'm wondering if I flipped the wrong page. You know what I'm saying?
You did a good job. You snuck it in on me while I was looking for something. You got me good.
It's possible. It's very possible. But where would you rank? All your different presentations in your career.
Well, I definitely say Val Venis is the most memorable one. That was the one I got over the most with. The Chief Morley one, believe it or not, I liked the Chief Morley one. I was just disappointed that The Office didn't see in that character what I saw in it. I thought that Chief Morley character had a lot more legs to it than what The Office gave it. But it is what it is. It's their company. They can do what they want, right? But yeah, I would say that the Val Venis character was definitely one of my most memorable ones. For me, it was one of my favorites. The Steel character in Mexico, I loved doing that character too. At first, I didn't like it because it took a little while to get used to wrestling with the mask on. Right. And but once you get used to that over a period of weeks, and I really enjoyed doing the Steel character down in Mexico as well. And then, of course, I don't know if you're familiar with the tag team in Puerto Rico that I was part of. Are you familiar with that by run down there?
I know you won the titles like 2 or 3 times, but I can't say that I'm familiar with videotape. No.
Yeah, we were it was my old partner, Shane Sewell. He was a Canadian that was my tag team partner. We wrestled down in Puerto Rico for a lot of years as a tag team. And that doing the whole Canadian Glamour Boys thing with my old partner Shane was a lot of fun. He was a great guy, and we had a really good time. And it was early in my career, so we were still young guys with no real direction other than we just want to be wrestlers and party. You know what I mean? We didn't really have any other goals set beside that at that point. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I would say, in third position, the Canadian Glamour Boy gimmick that we did in Puerto Rico. The second position would be Steel in Mexico, and number 1 would be the Val Venis character, my all-time favorite.
Well, I want to get to your book, but I wanted to ask you one last question. You worked with John Laurinaitis, correct?
Yes.
Uh-oh. What were your thoughts on Big John, especially the turncoat John Laurinaitis? He's with Janelle, he's with Vince, and now he's back with Janelle. And let's not forget that during this whole thing, his Bella's mother, who he was married to, had brain cancer, and he did that whole thing. Anyway, if I led you into it, John Laurinaitis, please.
Well, I first met John Laurinaitis, I think it was back in 95, 96, I believe it was, somewhere around there. He hired me to work in Japan. It was my very first tour of Japan, and it was for All Japan Pro Wrestling. And he brought me over there. I was grateful for that. And I was a young guy at the time. And so, I was the young kid there. And when Johnny brought me over there, I was doing, opening matches, second, third matches, and just getting my feet wet with the Japanese style. And we were there for, I think it was 3 weeks, that very first tour. And it was about a week and a half into the tour. And I was in the ring with the young guys before the doors opened. And we were just, rolling around the ring, doing some stuff, working some stuff out. And Mr. Baba was sitting way off in the corner. And I had never spoken to Mr. Baba. I hadn't even said hi to him at this point. And I've been on the tour for a week and a half. And he pointed at me while I was in the ring, and he told me to come here. So I got out of the ring and I walked all the way across the arena to where he was sitting. And I said, "Hello, Mr. Bob." And I introduced myself, Sean Morley. It's finally a pleasure to meet you. And then he asked me, he goes, "Why you throw right-hand clothesline?" And I said, "That's just the way I was taught. I always throw right-hand clothesline. Should I be doing it with the left?" And then he says, "Yes, throw left-hand clothesline." And they kind of described to me why the left, right? And it made sense to me. You're in the corner, a guy comes charging in, you put your boot up, and that guy staggers back. You can come out with a left-hand clothesline, like you're going to take his head off, and he can arm drag you if you're throwing the left. But if I'm throwing the right, it's not so easy to arm drag someone off the right side. So it made a lot of sense. So I went back in the ring and I just started hitting guys one after another with a left-hand clothesline. And I've been throwing a left-hand clothesline ever since. It just became normal after a little while. Felt weird at first, but it normalizes, and now I throw a left regularly. Well,
freaking awesome.
We did the show that night. And then after the show, we get on the bus and we travel to the next town and we get to the hotel. And when I get off the bus, I'm reaching under the bus into the baggage compartment. I'm pulling my bag out, and Johnny Ace says to me, "Hey, Sean, drop your bag off in your room and then meet me down in my room." I said, "Okay, cool." So I go upstairs, check in, and throw my bag in my room. I go down to Johnny's room and knock on the door, and Johnny opens. He goes, "Come on in here." And so I sit down with him, and he goes, "Hey, listen, I saw that you were talking to Mr. Baba, and I know that you're new here in Japan, and you don't know the hierarchy here, the ladder system, but there is a pretty strict ladder system here. And if you ever want to talk to Mr. Baba, you have to come talk to me. I talk to Mr. Baba for you. You can't go to Mr. Baba directly." And I'm thinking in my head, wait a minute, Mr. Baba's the one that pointed at me and told me to come over, but I didn't say anything to him because I'm a young guy, and the last thing I wanted to do is get my foot in Japan and then get fired, right? So I just kind of went, "Okay, yes, sir. Yeah, okay, no problem. I won't talk to Mr. Baba anymore." And then he told me, "Yeah, and just to let you know, a heads up, Mrs. Baba is the one that told me about it, and she's pissed that you went up to Mr. Baba and didn't go through me." And that's when I said, "Johnny, I'm not sure I understand, because he called me over to talk to him. What should I have done?" I said, "No, I'm not coming over there." And he goes, "If he points at you to come over, you come find me first." And I'm like, wow, okay. And I believed him because I didn't know. I thought, okay, this is a weird place to work.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it just didn't make sense to me. There was something wrong. I believed him, but I believed him out of faith because I couldn't put the logic together. You know what I mean? So I just said, he's got to be right. I just must be missing something. Well, the next morning, we're supposed to meet downstairs to get on the bus at 10:30 or something like that. And there was another Hawaiian wrestler named Kaya Mossman there. So I was meeting him down there early so we can go eat some breakfast before we get on the bus. So I go downstairs into the lobby and I meet Kaya Mossman, and guess who walks up to us? Mrs. Baba. And she comes up and she goes, "Oh, you boys want breakfast?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to eat breakfast over here. Come, I get you breakfast." And she took us for breakfast, sat down, we talked, we laughed. I'm sitting there going, she's not mad at me one iota. And then I started thinking, wait a minute. And so I started talking to some of the other veterans there, Gary Albright, Dr. Death. And I'm like, "Hey, can you give me any heads up here? What am I missing here? Because it's just not making sense." And they looked at me and they go, "He doesn't want you talking to Baba because he thinks you're going to take his job." And so,
go ahead.
and so the whole right there tells you he's incredibly insecure. And to be realistic, the guy was an amazing finish man, came up with awesome finishes. I could always, I could always call him up and say, "Hey, can I come do a tour?" And, surely he would say, "Yeah, I can get you on this one or that one." You know what I mean? He was a good businessman, but that's another guy where he had his moral bar way lower than what it should have been.
Well, let me ask you this. The rumor is, again, me and Jimmy are just fans, right? The rumor was that he was sleeping with Baba's wife behind Baba. Is that true? Or did you ever hear that rumor?
You know what? I didn't hear that rumor until I got into the WWE. I never heard that rumor when I was in Japan. But when I got into the WWE, just hanging out with the guys and people are chatting, and then that story came up and I went, whoa, what? I had no idea. I had no clue. And so whether it's true or not, I don't know. I got it secondhand information. It's a rumor. I can't verify that as true or not.
Well, when you were in the back with the guys in the WWE and he used to walk through, when he used to leave, were people like, "That guy's such a dick"? Was there a lot of that going on?
Yeah, I got along with Johnny. But there, after what I experienced in Japan, you have your trust up here. Well, I lowered that trust a little bit. I didn't hate Johnny. I like Johnny. I think he's a good businessman. But when it comes to not being in control of his desires, maybe, I guess you could say, that's a problem that he's got to deal with. But as far as being a businessman, I mean, he was always straight up with me. He never bullshitted me around. I've heard that he's bullshitted other guys around. I mean, other than telling me never to go talk to Mr. Baba again. I mean, other than telling me that, he's always been straight up with me. But yeah, I just see he's got a moral failing, right? He's a sinner. He's got a moral failing. It's something he needs to work on. But is he a criminal? With Vince McMahon, I could say probably not. I can't see Vince being a criminal. Was Johnny ever a criminal? I have no facts or evidence proving that to be true, but would I be surprised if that ever dropped and there were facts proving that to be true? I wouldn't be surprised. That's what I would leave that at.
Well, great story. Let's talk about your book. Very excited. Fill us
The
in.
Due Process Doctrine. Game changer. Flat out game changer. This book is going to blow the minds off the legal community. It's going to completely take the system that we have now, and the goal is to instill the seed of primal due process into the minds of Americans. We have been fed a load of crock about our due process rights. Our due process rights aren't granted as a privilege by government. Our due process rights are granted by our own creator, and that's recognized in the most supreme legal document in America twice. And it's also recognized and enshrined into the Declaration of Independence that our due process rights come from our creator, recognized twice in the Constitution, both in terms of state due process and federal due process. And the problem is, even though the founders recognized that all of our due process rights come from our creator and are inalienable, as opposed to a restricted privilege granted to us by some elected human beings called government, right? So there's a stark difference in those two ideologies, right? You have due process rights as an inalienable right, and then you have due process privileges that the government says, this is the due process you can exercise in our court. And my book is going to expose the foundational, fundamental flaw with that system. And I'll give you just a very simple prime example. Now, when I say it's going to change the system, it's not going to change mal and say laws, which are laws that create victims. Rape, murder, theft, extortion, fraud. Those are crimes against other human beings that create victims. What my book addresses are the mal prohibitum laws, which are laws that are not morally or ethically wrong. They're just based on obedience. The government decides they don't like people smoking marijuana. They're going to make a law and prohibit marijuana and risk throwing you in jail if you violate their law. But there is no victim in growing marijuana. And it's just a prohibition law, right? So my book addresses that entire industry of mal prohibitum laws. And it doesn't matter whether it's the prohibition of alcohol, Jim Crow laws, the gun restriction laws, you got the Japanese internment camp laws that threw Japanese in camps just for being Japanese. These are all laws that were written not to protect people from becoming victims or seeking justice for becoming victims. It is literally criminalizing peaceful human behavior. And so when we take a look at the foundational claim, every government will tell you you have a right to question any claim made against you. So if, for example, we'll just keep it real simple. We'll say speeding laws. Let's say you're going down a freeway. It says 65 miles an hour speed limit. You're traveling 75. It's a normal everyday thing. You're not harming anybody. No one's calling the cops saying, this guy's going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. You should stop him. Nobody's concerned. No one gives a rat's ass except for the one government dude on the side of the road with a radar. That's the only guy that cares that you're going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, right? So now he busts you. He gives you a citation that you violated what? The traffic laws, correct?
Yep.
He's giving you a citation. What's happening there? When he gives you that citation, what is happening is the government is claiming you are or that you violated their traffic laws. So when you go to court, you want to identify the claims being made against you. There's actually 2 claims being made against you, but only one is ever addressed. It's the claim of a violation. But here's where my book blows the case wide open. When the government brings you to court, they are the claimant. They are claiming you violated their traffic laws. When they make that claim in court, they are also making, because it's an inseparable claim, they are also claiming that you are obligated to obey their traffic laws, right?
Right.
Do you follow that logic?
Absolutely, yeah.
If they claim that you violated their traffic laws, then they're also claiming that you're obligated to obey their traffic laws.
Mm-hmm.
Your due process rights dictate that any man or group of men that make a claim against you, that you dispute, that you have full due process rights to have a fair and impartial judge compel the claimant to prove their claim true with valid, verifiable, non-circular facts. When you have prohibition laws written up, you have laws where they claim you violated them. They're also claiming you're obligated to obey them. That's the foundational claim that you need to address in court. So you have the court recognize that there's 2 claims, and this is where you motion the court. Does the court recognize 1 claim in this court or 2? Well, the court has to recognize 2 claims, especially when you paint that picture. And you got to remember, the claimant is the government. What's a judge do when you ask the judge, is the government claiming I'm obligated to obey? Their normal reaction is, you're in the state of Arizona, or you're in the state of New York, or you're in the state of Florida. Rest assured, you're obligated to obey. Well, when a judge says that to you, which they do, because that's what they're trained to do, my book teaches you to put the judge back into his position that he's supposed to do, be a judge. When the judge says that you're obligated to obey, he's making the exact same claim against you, the claimant, the government themselves. You see where the conflict is there?
Absolutely, yeah.
The government is the claimant, claiming you're obligated to obey, and now you have a judge making that same claim from the bench. And you got to remember, the judge has been conditioned like we all have. In fact, he's even more so because he's been trained deeply by the legal system, right? To work within the legal framework. You ask Socratic questions that are rational to make the judge answer his own question. And I did that in a case on YouTube that I have posted, where I asked the judge, it was on a rolling stop case. And I asked the judge, I said, Your Honor, is the claimant, the government, are they claiming that I violated their traffic laws when I performed a rolling stop? He says, yes. I said, is it also true that the government is claiming I'm obligated to obey their traffic laws? And he turned around, put his glasses on his nose, put his arm on his desk, and he goes, Sir, you're in the state of Arizona. Rest assured, you're obligated to obey the traffic laws. Now, from a statist perspective, that would sound like a rational thing for a judge to say, correct?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Watch how fast this judge switched up. When he said that to me, I went, whoa, Your Honor, I understand the claim being made against me that I'm obligated to obey, but I'm a little confused as to who's making that claim specifically. Is it the government or is it you? And the second I said you, I saw the light switch on in his head. He pushed his chair back, put his hands in the air, and he goes, no, it's the state of Arizona versus Sean Morley. And that's when I said, so just to clarify, the state, the government is claiming I'm obligated to obey their traffic laws. You're not making that claim, right? And he goes, right. He didn't know what else to say. It was right. It's just,
Right.
you know what I mean? He followed the line of logic. I asked him Socratic questions where he answered the question that he knew was right.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said right, I turned around and I said, what valid, verifiable, non-circular facts has the government presented your courtroom that would prove to rational human beings I'm obligated to obey that mal prohibitum law called traffic laws, which allows them to deprive me of my value, deprive me of my property, right?
Right. Yes.
He literally swung his head around back and forth and he goes, well, they'll have to prove that at trial. And we went to trial.
Wow.
And at trial, I had a female judge who clearly got the heads up that I was going to exercise real due process, not the government's version of due process. And the lady tried to get me to move past that question without having it satisfied. She tried hard to the point where I ultimately got surrounded by 3 cops in my own trial, kicked out of my own trial, and still got the case dismissed. They couldn't get past that question.
First of all, total commitment for rolling through a stop sign. I don't know many people that would commit that much time. Kudos.
Oh, yeah.
Where can people get this book?
So I'm going to release this book in the next few weeks. I got a few things I'm working just to polish it up, because there's certain situations that can be confusing, and I try to unpack it all so people can easily follow a line of logic and understand their primal due process rights they were born with, instead of the, privileged due process rights that government, gives us as a privilege. So I'm reintroducing Americans to their primal due process rights that, when used correctly in court, the courts cannot deny. And when this takes hold, you might get, traffic cases, I get them dismissed easily, right? But when it comes to taxes, gun laws, business laws, you got decades of precedent of legal inertia that we got to fight against. So I can see judges in the higher courts saying the logic is infallible. I recognize on the record the logic is infallible, but this issue with this due process being exercised is for an appellate court, not here. So we're going to move it up the court, and I can see the lower courts not addressing it. That's what I can see happening from this book.
So will you be accepting normal financial exchanges, or will it only be Bitcoin?
For my book? Well,
Yes.
I'll be encouraging people to pay with like Monero and Xano.
Okay. All right.
Bitcoin if they wish, but hey, if you want to protect your own privacy and buy a book without anybody knowing, Monero and Xano is the best way to do it.
So Jimmy, I do have one more question for Val. We value your time, and then we got the Pharaoh's final question, which is always off the hook. But before I even do that, if you're interested in Val's book, I also want to promote my own book that I'm recently. It's called Corn Dogs Are Life. And
Corn Dogs Are Life.
And that will be sold on Amazon, and that'll be coming out soon. So that.
What's your book about?
You have no idea.
It's about corn dogs. Corn dogs are life. About corn dogs.
Nice.
It's about what you do.
Nice cover, by the way. I can't tell you how fond I am to think that I was probably standing next to you. I remember that beach pose you gave. That's great.
You like that, right?
Yeah, corn dogs.
I do have a serious question though. Before Jimmy, you hit him with Pharaoh's final question. So you've mentioned God and again, God and country and state, incredible. But here's my question to you as a believer. I'm assuming you're a believer of Christ when we're talking about.
Oh,
God,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So here's my challenging question, because this is something I have issues with on a regular basis. Vince McMahon's an adulterer, right?
Yes.
Sin against God.
Yep.
Someone steals from a bank, right?
Yep.
And then someone murders 100 people.
Yep.
Now, when I go to church, and one question is does God look at it the same? And then the next question is, if someone like who's the guy that ate everybody, Jimmy? God, Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
So Dahmer finds Christ and he wants forgiveness. And I asked my pastor, I said, does Christ forgive a Jeffrey Dahmer? And he said, if he truly wants to be forgiven, he will be. So I'm going to call you Sean on this one, being that
Yep.
all three of us are high believers. What are your feelings about that? Are all crimes and immoral crimes looked at the same? And does God or Christ forgive people regardless what they do?
Yes, I absolutely do. I believe murderers can go to heaven, and I believe that the nicest person on the world can go to hell. And I believe that can absolutely happen because every single human being is a sinner. And what are the wages of sin? The wages of sin is death. Doesn't matter what the sin is, the wages of sin is to live eternally outside of the kingdom of God and not secure your spot inside the kingdom of God. And we're all sinners. We all deserve what Jesus Christ received unjustly on that cross. He took our place on that cross. We deserved what was happening to Jesus Christ on that cross. But Jesus saw that we deserve to be on that cross because we're all sinners. He's the only sinless human being to ever walk the face of God's green earth. And so he didn't deserve what happened to him on that cross. We all deserved it. He knew it. He put himself on that cross and created a gift to give to all of humanity, basically saying, you are all sinners. None of you will secure your place in the kingdom of God until I get on that cross and pay for your sins for you. But he's not going to force you to accept that gift. He went on that cross, that's where I should have been. I should be on that cross. But he went there in my place, and he's handing that gift to me. He's literally saying, Sean, you are a sinner. You deserve hell. But I'm going on that cross for you, and I'm dying. This is my gift to you. I pay the fine for you. You have to willingly accept it. I can't force you to take this gift, but I'm going on there and I'm dying for you so you won't have to die like that. But if you don't take my gift, that's on you. I'm giving you the choice. I'm going to die for you and I'm going to extend my offer. All you have to do is take it. And why people don't take that gift boggles my mind. That man took our place on that cross because we can't say Vince McMahon's a sinner and ignore the fact that I'm a sinner. You're a sinner. Everybody watching this is a sinner. There's only one man that's ever walked God's green earth sinless, and that was the Lord of Nazareth, Jesus Christ himself. And so, when I look at sin, murderers can go to heaven. Absolutely. If they truly embrace Jesus Christ and they recognize that, holy crap, I'm headed to live eternity outside of the kingdom of God. And that man died on the cross for me. And now he's offering me a gift of salvation. Hell yeah, I'm taking that salvation. Why wouldn't you? I think it's insane not to. Yet, if you go around to college kids, you'll find a lot of college kids that won't even look at the reality of why that man died on the cross and what he's actually offering. It's all about how good of a person are you? Who cares how good of a person you are? That'll come when you finally accept Jesus Christ died on the cross for the sins that we all do every day. We deserve that death, not Jesus.
Well done, sir. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Jimmy, Pharaoh's final question, brother.
Oh, sure. You want me to go from Jesus of Nazareth to this question, huh? Very.
You may not want
You know
to answer
something?
that.
Before we get to this, I have a disclaimer. Val, I'd like to thank you for being so good to the show up to this point. But after I get done being crucified myself now, Mike, you are truly evil to switch from Jesus to this spot because
Wow.
once upon a time, I'm segueing, Michael. Once upon a time, we had a wonderful guest named Missy Hyatt who ultimately got us kicked off of YouTube channel #1. But let's not get into that.
Well, let's not forget about that. Yeah, that was one of them. Valentine, the next one, whatever. Missy was the final straw. Yes.
Right. Correct. When we had her on, she said that you and her had a thing. Would you like to share any personal memories of such said thing?
No, not at all.
There you go, Mike. There it is.
Not at all.
There it is, right there.
No. Missy. So Missy Hyatt and I,
Went.
we met up in New York, and I met her at a
New York.
convention somewhere
Good old New
originally.
York. Yeah.
Good old New York.
It's always
And
By
I
the
met
way,
her up
Val.
there.
By the way, Val. Not to interrupt you. Best answer ever.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very honest. He's very honest.
I met her up in New York, and we were at a convention, and I was at a convention with Billy Gunn doing a signing, and that's where I met her. And then I saw her that night. I was wrestling in Madison Square Gardens, and I'm out there just looking around at the fans, and I see this one person stand up. She was kind of sitting on the floor, but like on the floor in the middle, and she stood up like, and I saw her, and I went, "Oh, there you are." So, needless to say, we didn't have much of an interaction after that. Okay, I mean, we talked here and there, but ultimately, I didn't talk to her for years after that. Years, and then she came out with this book, making all these claims. I don't know what the hell she was talking about, and then I didn't see her up until probably 2-3 years ago. I saw her at a convention. And I walked up and I said, "How the hell are you doing? Are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "I'm not mad at you. You can talk whatever you want to talk. I don't give a shit."
Wow.
And that was it. We started talking, and I saw her a couple times after that. And yeah, all was good. All was good. But Missy Hyatt, let's face it. Missy Hyatt's another one that absolutely needs to find the Lord Jesus Christ. Because her moral bar is she needs to find Jesus Christ. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh man!
Well,
but just know that there is a spot in the kingdom of God waiting for Missy Hyatt to accept her gift.
Jesus is going to forgive Missy Hyatt. That's
you heard it here. All she has.
Soundbite.
all Missy Hyatt has to do is just accept the gift of Jesus Christ. That's it.
All right.
Sean, the work that you're doing and the words that you're sending out, just entire program and what you stand for, shows the moral value, and it makes me feel like there is a chance for this country and its people. Because personally, every day when I watch the news, I just get sicker and sicker to my stomach, to the point I'm about to give up. So, thank you for doing the show, because you opened up my eyes, and your ideas are fantastic. Whether they can come to fruition or not, well, who knows, right? Because
there's a lot of inertia, but there's a lot of inertia against it.
That's right.
Yep.
And I try to always say to myself too, in this world now, especially with President Trump in office, that's where people get very politically involved. And then when Biden's in office, no one could give a shit. You don't hear a word about politics for 4 years, right?
Right. Everybody's questioning their gender under Biden.
Exactly. So, but my point is, even what you said about when I asked you about President Trump, you weren't committing there either, which I respect, right? Because there's questionable stuff going on there also. So in the end, we're all pawns in this whole thing that we call this world, right? So, credit to you for being a voice and using your public persona to at least get that word out there. And you got my respect, and I'm sure you got Jimmy's respect. Not speaking for you, Jimmy, but I'm sure he does.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Well, thank you guys. I greatly appreciate that, man. That was a pretty awesome interview. I'm digging this.
Well, I loved it, man. So with that, I want to thank the great Val Venis. Jimmy, I'll see you in a couple of minutes. What an honor. Good luck tomorrow. And the one question I did have, is Eric Sims an immigrant? That's what I was thinking about.
Boy,
is Eric Sims what?
An immigrant.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Something for us to ponder.
Maybe that's a rabbit hole we need to go down a little bit sometime.
Next time.
When he takes you to when he takes you to Burger King for lunch tomorrow, you can ponder.
Purebred American.
Here we go.
Come see Val Venis at the Wrestling Classic 6. That's tomorrow, Springfield, Massachusetts. He will be there with the devil himself. That's the sinister minister. Oh, yeah.
James, right. All right.
Mitchell. James Mitchell. Satan's coming.
James Mitchell.
Cactus Jack, JVL, my favorite, Jules Strongbow.
Wait a minute.
And
Are you talking about the same
Cool.
James Mitchell that decided to snort cocaine at an NWA televised pay-per-view?
Yeah, that James
That
Mitchell.
James Mitchell.
He
Oops, I didn't mean to
rules.
say that.
What's the problem? Anarchy.
tremendous.
Well, the next time we have him in, you can interview him about that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could do that. Yeah.
Jimmy, send us out, baby.
You've been watching Monte and the Pharaoh with the great Val Venis, and we'll see you in a few moments later.